We are back. Hopefully, you watched or listened to last week's podcast, our pre-Boundary Waters edition. We left Scott off on purpose, as we said, because we wanted to talk about what we thought was going to go down. Now it's gone down, and we're here to recap it all with our fearless leader in tow. I'm Brandon Butler.
I'm paddled on.
Sorry.
Next.
I'm Scott Mackenthun.
I'm Derek Butler.
And Adam Voight.
We do it again. Sorry, I was over the same time as Don there. I'm Adam Voight.
Welcome to the Driftwood Outdoors podcast. Shags isn't joining us. We've already got a crowd. The big guy's in bed. He gets up early to do his radio show. So we're not going to talk about anything but Boundary Waters. We're just going to get right to it. I'm still limping in my right leg. I know a few others are wearing bruises. I'll kick it off by saying the fishing was lights out. It was amazing. We had all you can eat walleye. Scott knows this part of the world like the back of his hand, was generous with showing us a few spots and then turning us out on our loose, or turning us loose out on our own. And everybody did well on the fish. And that part of the trip was remarkable. Fishing out of a canoe for 5 days, that's questionable. And you can't control the weather. So we had the ups and downs on the weather. The first 3 days were pretty cold and torrential downpours at times, a lot of just damp and cold. But then the skies opened up and it became bluebird and sunny and beautiful. So we got a little bit of everything. I'll kick it off. Scott, you've done this 14, 15 times. Like, how did this trip go for you?
You know, I thought it went really well. One of the blessings is to be able to bring new people, give them that experience in the wilderness. And, I think you just reach a point where you get more enjoyment out of seeing other people fall in love with the place, experience all that there is to experience out there, the scenery, the wildlife, the fishing, the time, the camaraderie around the campfire. So this is as good as any. I've met some really great people around the campfire, had some great conversations, and had some incredible memories, and this is right up there with any of them.
Yeah, well, thank you again. We've all thanked you again and again for putting it together and letting us come and showing us the ropes. It was really beneficial to have somebody like you along to, give us the guided tour. It was awesome. So, Adam, your initial take on it?
Man, I haven't got to listen back to the first podcast yet, but I need to do that, though, just to do a little comparison now to what the expectations were versus what we experienced. And, I guess my biggest takeaway from it was just how enjoyable it was to, totally disconnect. That's a rare thing for us. We work in a technology-based world where, whether it's the phone, the laptop, the demands of having teams that we work with, and just that constant connection. So having such a contrast from that to be able to, by the time we hit Duluth and then up to Grand Marais, up the Gunflint Trail, you slowly just kind of start letting go of all those connections you have, whether it's losing cell phone reception and, getting to that point where you're getting up there and you start to immerse in that country up there. And it's incredible. I've been along the border up there before, kind of more on the western side of the state, but hadn't been in this area before. But I kind of knew what the scenery was generally going to look like, but this was a new experience where you leave at the truck and you get picked up at the dock, and then we're an hour boat ride out to the drop-off location, and then next thing you know, we're paddling for 8+ miles, and you're about as remote as you can possibly get, or the most that I've ever been before, as far as disconnecting and being immersed in nature like that. So that's probably the first thing that I had. First takeaway was just that feeling of truly being immersed into nature, and the water up there. It's incredible, like how clear it is, and the fishing and the scenery and the wildlife that we saw. That's kind of my first take on it, is just having that experience where you really could just disconnect from everything and fully jump into nature there. And add the fishing on top of that. That's some of the best I've experienced. It's the best walleye fishing I've ever experienced. And Thank you so much, Scott, for, showing us, how it's done up there, the methods that you use, the locations, and then getting us on some of the best walleye fishing I've ever experienced, where, every single fish we caught, for us, it would have been a trophy walleye, but those were the average size fish. We were getting up into those mid 20 on up fish, where those were the nice ones, where those 20-inch fish were pretty regular for us. So that was just incredible to me. I think going into this brand, I kind of questioned, like, why do we need to go so far? Like, why do we need to go so far? But then it all came, then it was crystal clear to me, we're getting away from the crowds. We're getting away from the people. Scott knows the locations, the quality there of the water, and each individual fishery there at those lakes. So him being able to put us in those locations where the base camp was at and be able to have access to that walleye fishing and the pike fish and the smallmouth bass, everything else that we hit, it was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so Adam and I rode up together from Missouri, and I don't think we were 30 miles north of Duluth when you started inquiring about real estate prices.
Yeah.
Like, you got that view of Lake Superior, and you're just like, how much do you think one of these houses cost up here? So I get it, man. I've loved the Great Lakes my whole life, and getting on that Highway 61, and we started jamming some Bob Dylan, and Highway 61 revisited. So for us, it was the first visit. We got to go back so we can revisit it someday. Paddle Don, you went into this saying you've been like, this was the pinnacle. Like, you were expecting this to be the pinnacle of a long paddling career. How did it add up?
Well, it was definitely a check-off item on the bucket list. I've hit some of my whitewater goals back in the younger days, and this has always eluded me. I've been close a few times. Came up and did the lodge life when I was a kid, and got an appreciation. But this was to actually immerse myself in the boundary waters the way we did was really the culmination of a long paddling career. It's kind of like what Adam was saying about being remote. There are plenty of other places in the United States you can be further from this or further from that, but with the constraints of the terrain and the transportation mode, the water is basically the only mode of transportation around there. So it's as remote as you could be in the lower 48, in that sense. And that was to go out and do this the way we did. It was really rewarding. It was everything I thought it would be. It was as hard as I thought it would be. It was as fun as I thought it would be. The weather was pretty much what was expected. I did a lot of research going into this, and I don't want to say it was everything I thought it was going to be, because it was that plus a lot more. The scenery is second to none. The fishing was stellar, and I also want to throw the props to Scott for not only just showing us the way, but he was an absolute open book as far as getting the map out and giving you specific locations, letting you know every little small detail, but not making you feel like, he was spoon feeding you stuff. It was all natural conversation, and you felt enlightened by it. And plus, the other side of that is, as Brandon has said so many times, outdoor fellows in the outdoor world who tend to work on the scientific end of things, as Scott does, don't always communicate as effectively. And he passed a lot of knowledge on to us about not only how to fish, but what, why, where. I learned a lot, and I just want to say thank you. It was an incredible experience.
Derek, you've ridden a bike across the country. You've kayaked down in the Keys as an instructor. You were a snowboard instructor. You've done some really cool stuff in the outdoors. How did this stack up?
Well, I mean, like I said in our first podcast, we talked about this, that this was a bucket list item for me. I was supposed to go on one of these when I was in college, like a freshman in college with a buddy, and they didn't have enough permits stacked up. So me and him ended up just dropping out and not going. So this has been a to do thing ever since then, right? It honestly kind of lit a fire under me to do the bike trip. Like, it was that, and then I was supposed to do the AT, and it didn't happen, and it kind of all stacked up. So being able to come full circle and come back to this was just amazing to me. And honestly, it was pretty close to what I expected. Like, getting away, being in nature for a week was awesome. Is exactly what I needed in my life. Like, I'm in a better place now than I was before I left, and the trip itself, like, as far as fishing goes, I'm a pretty shit fisherman, really, and being able to go up there and have Scott there to like give me some, like Paddle Don said, like, not talk to me like an idiot, but just give me some tips on, okay, well, there's a nice flat spot over there. That's probably where those walleye are going to be. This is the depth you should be fishing at, and those sorts of things, man, help so much. Instead of me spending 3-4 days trying to figure out where the friggin' walleye were, I was able to, like, we were able to just jump right on them, and that helped so much. But I mean, I feel like I had everything I needed. Like, I feel like my past experiences helped me, like, be prepared for this. Like, I had everything I wanted, everything I needed, and I mean, it lived up to expectations, and I had a great time.
And one of the things I talked about in the first podcast was, normally I'm pretty involved in the planning of these sort of trips for the crew, and being able to just trust in Scott that it was, hey man, it's your trip, you've done it a bunch, I know you, I know it's going to be great, cool. But never did I think I'd be in the front of a canoe. I'm definitely a back of the canoe kind of guy.
We all are, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, very much. But so Derek and I are cousins, but closer than a lot of brothers. And I'm the older one, so normally I'd get his ass in the front of the canoe. But having already turned over control to Scott, and then Derek saying, "Why don't you just sit up front and fish?" And I thought, yeah, what the hell? So I did, and I was the front of the canoe person for the first time, and I caught way more fish than you.
I was gonna say, you caught at least 3-1 on me, no doubt.
So that front of the canoe's not so bad. So let's go. We're just gonna keep going around until somehow it breaks into more. But I want to do like positive surprises, negative surprises. We'll talk about gear that we use, all kinds of different stuff that I think will be useful for anyone listening. Scott gave us a really nice detailed list of gear to bring. Man, I brought it, and you were generous in saying, like, condense your tackle boxes into one, which is funny because you brought a tackle box that Santa couldn't get down a chimney if he tried.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But I 100% could condense my tackle down to one tray. I mean, my number one lure was a quarter ounce. Well, first of all, Scott brought in 2 pounds of leeches. So we all kicked into the kitty and split up everything and 2 pounds of leeches. So it was slip bobbers.
Smallmouth.
Yeah. Small. I never in my life thought I'd get tired of catching smallmouth. Like, God damn it, it's just another 20-inch smallmouth. But it was leeches under slip bobbers. And my number one go-to after that was just a rooster tail, quarter-ounce rooster tail jig head with a willow blade on it and a leech. And you throw that out on a drop-off, and you pull it back up the drop-off, and bam. So I could have left all the whopper ploppers and good big old, 6-inch northern jerk baits and stuff like that at home. But so let's go around and do, I guess we'll go positive first, like a positive surprise. So, a positive surprise for me was how quickly we could cover ground in those canoes. I've not done a ton of like open water canoeing. I've done a lot of river canoeing, but we covered miles and miles of lake, and Scott probably knows the actual miles of how far it was, but over the 5 days, we had to have paddled 30 miles collectively or more. It was, and we got around pretty quick. So we were trolling baits and catching fish like under the power of canoe paddles. So even when there was some stiff winds and some big waves, I mean, we were fishing in whitecaps at times, and some of the lakes are really big. So you're out in big waves. We were still moving our canoes pretty fast, even into the wind. So, maybe that had a lot to do with the nice Kevlar Winona canoes that we were in and rented. But I think that was a positive surprise. I didn't realize that we would cover so much ground. We covered a lot of ground, and I like that. Scott, after all these trips, it's like every time you watch an old movie, you still learn something new. Well, you got a takeaway from this trip? Did you learn anything or anything positively surprise you?
Oh boy. I'll say this, positive surprise for me. Typically when you're up here, I packed in a thermocell, as did many members of our party. We're all hip to that. As outdoorsmen, we're aware of thermocells. We've got spray on, DEET, and then, I recommended a head net. This is the first time, and it'll probably never happen again. I did not wear the head net. There were hardly any mosquitoes in the portages. I never applied any bug spray, and I never turned on my thermocell. I am also known to have very high tolerance for mosquitoes, but I think I'd see, a couple out in the evening, and I would just slap them. I mean, yeah, there's probably more, half a dozen at the latrine, and I just could not believe, how few mosquitoes there are, which owes to a couple of things, the slower metabolism and it being a little cooler, so they're probably behind in development, and then just how dry it had been. And it was a blessing for us to get the rain that we did for the first 3.5 days. But if you were going up this week, I think you'd be annihilated by mosquitoes. So a very pleasant surprise that I don't expect to see again in my BWCA career.
Yeah, I definitely applied some bug spray. I never put on a bug net, so it was never miserable. I don't want to steal anybody's positive surprise, but while we're on the topic of bugs, we had one of the coolest things I've ever seen in nature happen. We were sitting inside of a screen tent, and if you go on the Driftwood Outdoors Facebook page, you'll see a picture of this. This creepy bug crawls up the side of the screen tent and then starts doing some kind of dance like Derek after too many whiskeys at a wedding. And next thing you know, its back rips open like in Spaceballs, and a huge dragonfly comes out of the back of this bug that's like a third its size. So I guess I never put much thought into how dragonflies are born. I didn't think it was like that though. And then the dragonfly crawled off of its former body onto the screen and sat there and kind of dried its wings for maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and it took off. So it was an amazing feat of nature to catch.
That was really neat.
So Adam, what was a positive surprise for you, man?
Well, so the question for me, Brandon, is can you get sick of eating fresh caught walleye?
Derek, mowing the grass.
It appears Derek is having technical difficulties. There we go.
I'll restart.
Yeah.
So the question for me, Brandon, is can you get sick of eating fresh caught walleye cooked over a campfire? And the answer is no. I think we had it 5 nights in a row. We added in some lake trout there on the last night, but I don't think we get enough of it. Now, I know you'll attest to that, Brandon.
I did my best to prove that true. Every night I asked Scott to add 1 or 2 more to the mix. Like I said, if you keep cooking it, I'll keep eating it.
Yeah, absolutely did that, man. It was incredible though, just to have. I mean, something that you caught that day. Fresh fillet right there off the side of the lake. Scott and Joe did an excellent job cooking it over the open fire there. Just never got sick of it. It was absolutely incredible. And on top of that, had it again this weekend. I'm sure we'll touch on that. We all got to bring home a limit of walleye with us and split that up with my family, and did a Father's Day fish fry over the weekend, and got to share that with them as some fresh caught walleye there for that. It was quite a treat for the family on that. So yeah, that was an incredible surprise just to be able to have that every single day. I wasn't quite sure, one night are we going to break the rule here in the Ozarks and eating some smallmouth? Are we going to do that up there? But no, we had walleye every single night, and it was incredible.
Well, I wanted to eat a smallmouth, but Scott kept throwing them back. He wouldn't let us eat those dirt fish. We never did eat one. Did you fillet any?
We never did. We talked about it, and it's always an option. There's nothing wrong with them, but I tell people that when I go on this trip, it's the one time out of the year that I'm a walleye snob, and I want us to eat walleyes, and I take pride in trying to do it. The hardest night is always the first night because you make camp and you've got chores to do and you have a very limited window. But we were able to pull a rabbit out of our hat and find some walleyes.
Yeah, that was cool. Don, positive surprise?
I mean, just the whole trip was a positive surprise. I'm not surprised. I was hoping for it, but we pulled it off well. You know, Adam was talking about earlier, and you guys were all talking about, paddling. Or you and Derek talking about paddling and partners, and it worked out that I jumped in the back of the boat right off the bat, and Adam was up front, and we've never paddled together. We've hung out a few times, and we know each other fairly well through driftwood, but this was our first time adventuring together. And I think that was the biggest pleasant surprise for me was we got into a groove. We got things figured out. I've spent a lot of time in a canoe with a paddle in my hand, and I could tell right away that that Adam was Adam's most of his experience was on moving water, rivers, because he was on point on front and making the corrections up there before I had a chance to, and he was on it. And we, once we got into the open water and got in a groove, and we started really putting some miles in, we did learn a little secret on the way back. So we didn't give you guys too much of a hard time about this. But I bet 15 or 20 times over the week, I looked at Adam and I said, how the hell is that canoe moving? Because Brandon and Brandon and Derek would be moving along, Brandon would dip his paddle every few minutes and, sit up there and kind of limp wristed a little
I'm busy
bit.
catching fish.
Well, no, we're just moving, and Derek's paddling, taking a break, and and the two of us, we dug nonstop. We were like grave diggers with those paddles. And
digging in.
figured out what was on the ride out. I don't remember the gentleman's name that brought us out. The fellow that took us in had a heck of a story. He's living a life just like Derek did, and kudos to him. I think his name was Eli. But the fellow that brought us out was like, who was in what boat? And we pointed and kind of grunted, and he said, so you two were in that one, huh? And I said, yeah. I said, what? We just assumed they were different. We never really looked at them. But once we had them up on the rack and we were headed back, so he said, yeah, that one there. And he pointed at the one that Adam and I were in. He said, that's, I can't remember what model it was. He said, but that's kind of like paddling a bathtub. If you look, it's considerably wider than that other one. And he said, this one, and he pointed at the one that you and Derek were in. He said, that thing will cut right through the water. And it all made sense then, because looking at them side by side, you could see how much more sleek the one was. But we were convinced that you guys had one of those stick on the bottom little electric trolling motors or something for a while, because we were just digging to get nowhere, and you guys were just moving right along. But it did work into our favor later in the week, because Brandon, you did comment in private that you guys were very tippy out there in the wind, and our boat was very stable. There was a few times I shifted my large posterior around and gave Adam a little bit of a startle, but for the most part, we could handle sitting out there in those waves. That last day when you guys went up to the lake trout lake, and we stayed and collected walleye out in the main body out there, it was pretty windy, and we were never in any question. So the biggest positive I took away from it all was just getting to know Adam so much better and finding a groove with him, and we really got it on. There were several times I ended up staying in the back of the boat all week. I wasn't trying to hog the steering duties, and I didn't need to fish so much as I was catching the fish I needed to and wanted to. And there was times when Adam was passing by stuff. I'm trying to work, I'm holding him on these prime spots, and he's casting past and trying to be a little bit courteous with the cast, thinking he's leaving me some spots. And I said, no, back up, man. I said, I just want to get you on a spot. I'm catching my fish. I'm loving watching you up front. So, it was fun to put him on some spots and hold him on some and watch him really find his groove with these fish. We got into pike. I think we had pike more regular than the other boats. We caught maybe 9 to 12 of them, some decent sized ones. I caught one that was just under 30 inches, and that was a lot of fun. They are definitely snot rockets. They will slime up a boat in a minute. But then, I got into a 25.
You're answering questions I haven't even asked yet.
Okay, well, you asked me what the positives were, man. I got into it was the fishing
No
and
positive. One positive takeaway.
getting in with Adam and just getting a groove and working
There
our
you
thing out
go.
and becoming a team.
You had to slip in that almost 30-inch pike, though, didn't you?
Oh
We
yeah,
didn't hear about that the whole damn trip.
yeah.
I appreciate you, Don, and thank you so much, man. That I likewise right back at you, buddy. And you were a great paddle partner, and appreciate you, pointing us in the right direction there and keeping me on some good spots. And yeah, I think we were a great team on that. So appreciate that.
Well, I'll say we would have traded you canoes in a heartbeat. It felt like we were on one of those logs that lumberjacks roll. And me and Derek were out there in the middle of those waves, like having conversations about like, what do we do when this thing tips over? And all of our gear sinks to the bottom at 80 feet. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But I mean, I was nervous to turn around to take his picture. And that's never really been the case before. So, I mean, Derek and I together with our gear, I mean, we had at least 700 pounds in that canoe, probably more like 750. And, there were definitely times where, it got a little hairy out there thinking if we were to turn over this far from shore, like, what do you do? So save yourself is the answer. But if you lost all your gear while you're out there, that'd be bad. So that is something to consider. So I'm glad Don brought that up. Like when you do go to rent a canoe, you might want to ask them, am I getting a... Well, after a little bit of technical difficulty, it looks like we're back online. Don't know exactly where we left off, except it was Derek's turn to tell us what was a positive surprise for you. 1, Derek, not 4 like Paddle Don.
I mean, I could probably go on for a little while and talk about it like Don, but I don't know. I don't really have one specific thing. I mean, the mosquitoes not being there, like Scott said, was amazing. I really expected to tore up, and there was none. I guess if I had to choose one, it'd be how many smallmouth we caught. We got tired of pulling them off the line, but the truth is, just catching fish and catching 20+ inch smallmouth all day was amazing. I mean, that was so much fun. So, yeah, just everywhere you try to catch a pike, try to catch a walleye, you pull in a large smallmouth. So that was great. I did not expect that. I thought half my tackle was smallmouth when we got to hunt them. They were there. They're everywhere.
Yeah, Scott told us before we went up there, like, those dirty smallmouth, you Missouri and Indiana guys, and we kind of understood by the time we left. So
The bluegill.
We got you converted to the dark side. You walleye purists, and no, you end up catching. I tell people, like, don't even bother targeting smallmouth because you'll get enough of them incidentally. But hey, there's a heck of a lot of tourists that come up and pay a lot of money and go out with guides and have 100 fish days and beat them up real good. So I'm never gonna knock a fish. I love all fish. I do love my smallies too. Took a few pictures with them. I just like to give people grief. But we eat walleyes. We catch smallies are the fun fish. Walleyes are the food fish.
yeah. Okay. Then we got to go around now and do, something that you were surprised by. Like, we won't use the word negative, but something that you didn't expect. And for me, that's how many people were in there. So it is very primitive. It is very rural. I think if you go back and listen to me in the first one, I kind of thought we were going into the Alaska bush where you don't see another person. Like, what would happen if, insert broken leg, broken back, something really catastrophic? How would you ever get out of there? Well, the answer is you would just yell and someone would hear you, because there was plenty more people than I expected. There was competition for campsites. Like, we didn't get the campsite Scott wanted until our third night. We had to take a subsequent campsite for 2 days, and then we got to move to the primo spot. And then people kept coming up to us, asking us when we'd be vacating that site. So at one point, Derek and I were laughing. It was kind of like, back in the 1700s when there was flotillas, like warships. Like, we were like our little gang of warships, and over here there's another gang. And so there was all over, there were different gangs of warships. But yeah, not necessarily a huge negative, just something that surprised me was that there was way more people back in there than I expected. Adam Voight. No, it would be Scott. Scott, on this trip, what was something that surprised you?
All right, we were paddling in to our portage, which the United States Forest Service maintains. And, it's made the news that the Forest Service has not been well funded. There's been cuts to the administration. There's been battles over public lands. And certainly all of us would support taking good care of our public lands, our wilderness areas. We had a fantastic trip. We know the Forest Service is a little shorthanded that way, but the portage on one end was in really rough shape, particularly the infrastructure that the Forest Service oversees. So I did stop on my way home to talk with those folks to let them know that it was going to be a safety hazard, and trying to get a picture sent over to them so they see. That was a major surprise. It really slowed us down going through there. We had a lot of mud, a sinkhole. We had some unsafe conditions getting around all that. And, just to put a bow on it, I did see today that the Forest Service is taking comment on increasing permit pricing for entering the boundary waters, which I will wholeheartedly support, knowing that could make the difference for hopefully bringing on more staff and being able to tackle some of these infrastructure issues. They talked about addressing campsites, latrines, portages, those sorts of things. So it's incredibly affordable what we pay to get a permit to go in there, considering what we spend on food and bait and tackle and, modern comforts that we bring in with us. So I'm hoping other canoeists, paddlers, anglers, wilderness enthusiasts will support that. But that was my surprise. Our portage was in real rough shape.
What was the cost of the permit?
How much were the portages, or how much were the permits? I mean, I know we kind of threw it all in one lump, so you want to go over that real quick?
Yeah, adult permits. I can find this hopefully on the fly here. I want to say it's like $20 or something like that. There's a small convenience fee of $6 to do it online, but it's pretty darn affordable. I'll look it up here while the next person goes when I get a break.
Is that per person? Because you can get up to 9 people on one permit.
Yep, that is a per person charge. Yep.
Yeah. And is that for the whole time you're in there, or it's not per day? So
it's for the whole time that you're in there.
Yeah, I could definitely go to $21.50 on that, no problem.
$16 per adult user fee and $8 per youth. So incredibly affordable.
I think going to 25 and 10 would be very acceptable.
If it would have paid for us not having to chuck through that mud, it would have been worth it, right?
I'd have thrown in another $9 for that.
No doubt.
So, Adam, something that took you off guard.
Well, there's a few stories, and we might touch on that one here a little bit later. But as far as like my expectations going into it and what was a little bit different, probably touching on what Don mentioned, where his comments on me being a stream paddler, going downhill, going with the flow. That's how I learned on a canoe as a kid. Learning how to do that with my dad in the back, me in the front of it, and that's my level of comfort. And so when I say, tell the group or tell Don or whoever, yeah, I've got some experience in a canoe. That was my experience. So being on flat water, I had no concerns about it at all. Knew I'd be able to handle myself with a canoe, know how to steer a canoe, know how to paddle, stuff like that. But probably the one factor I didn't really think about was what happens on day one. We're paddling 8 miles into the wind. And that's pretty much what happened. And not that we couldn't do it, but it was just more, it was a surprise, I think, as far as like the physicality that it takes to do that whenever you, to your point, Brandon. I was trying to add up I knew what my weight was, plus Don knew what his weight was on as far as the gear that we were bringing in, plus some of the group gear that we brought in. We probably were in that 650 to 700 pound range for our canoe. And you take that white canoe and you're paddling into the wind. It took a good bit of effort. I was pretty sore that first day, and that was a little bit of surprise to me. So that's probably the one takeaway I had that caught me a little bit off guard as to what to expect for that. And, it took some physicality to get there.
Got to hit the gym before you go to the boundary waters.
Right? Yeah.
Get on them supplements.
And to your point, Adam, like it could have been dangerous too. Like we had like 6 to 7 inches of, from water to the side of the boat. And we would have had 20 plus mile-an-hour winds, man. It would have been dicey as hell going in there. So we were lucky going in and coming out. So
What took you back paddling?
Well, Adam kind of took, the end of his little speech there was exactly where I was going. Was, years ago, we joked about this in the boat, and years ago, my cousin Tom and I, we spent a lot of time paddling flat water together, and we nicknamed ourselves the Headwind Paddlers because it seemed like every trip we were on, the way in was into the wind, the way out was into the wind, and that was the story. That the one thing that surprised me was weather-wise. I was expecting some cold compared to what we're used to down here. I'm sure everybody up there thought it was typical early June weather, but it was a little bit chilly for us on the first couple days. And the thing that surprised me was the wind was constantly swirling. I don't know if we were stuck under a system the whole time, but it would, every 40 minutes, it seemed like it was coming from a different direction. And it was always the direction Adam and I were heading. We all paddled in the headwind. We paddled out half the way. It was a gentle breeze into our face, which, heading northeast out of there didn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's, Murphy's Law of paddling, I guess. But just seemed like as soon as you made excuse me, a perfect point is when we were out walleye fishing. We all came to know the spot we called the tabletop there. That was a spot about the size of a picnic table that went to about 9 feet, with 60 up to 40 up to 20, and then a 9-foot little pinnacle in the middle. And that piece of rock was actually probably not much bigger than a picnic table. And we were having to put our anchor on that. And as soon as we would contend for it, if you sat right on top of it, like you guys said, and pulled your bait upwards, as soon as you hit that shelf, there was a walleye on. I didn't do the slip bobber thing. We did a jig head with the leech behind it, and with great success. But every time we'd get set, the wind would shift, it would blow us off, we'd have to paddle back on. I think we paddled more the second to last day than we paddled going in or out. I'm just trying to hold our spot. I was just about as sore that day as I was paddling in, but it was nothing.
You know where
that was horrible.
he screwed up, Don, was so I threw 2 rocks in my anchor bag, right? And then Brad's like, no, you should probably get that one too. I bet it weighed 70 pounds by the time I had all 3 rocks in there. If you would have dropped that on there, there's no way it would have blown you.
We were definitely under anchored.
Well,
So I guess it's up to me, huh?
yeah, Derek, what surprised you?
So the one thing that surprised me was the lack of mammals. I thought there'd be more animals up there. I mean, there's tons of birds. Like if you want to eat fish, right, that's a great place for an animal to be. But we didn't see just hardly any signs of other mammals. I mean, there's moose tracks. We saw an otter, which apparently is rare, but me and Brandon saw an otter one day. I didn't see a squirrel. I didn't see signs of like raccoons or anything. And there just weren't a lot of other animals besides fish eating creatures. And, I'm sure it's because just the land is harder than I thought it was, right? Like it's all rocks, it's all steep. There's not the big marshes. I guess I expected there to be like some marshes between lakes, like more so than we saw in our stretch that we paddled. And so that surprised me at the lack of other life. I mean, tons of birds, right? I mean, tons of loons and bald eagles and things that eat meat or that eat fish. But yeah.
How about injuries or mishaps? So I'll kick this one off. Me and Derek decided to go up to a lake that Scott said we should go fish so we could try our hand at getting a lake trout. Glad we did it. We both ended up catching a lake trout, and it was a beautiful lake. Derek, I think you said it was your favorite. And we're not naming these on purpose. We're doing Scott a solid here and protecting all of his secrets. But it was a beautiful lake, and it was worth going up to. But
It was.
in my infinite wisdom, I thought going through the portage, seeing as how we'd only been through 2, one very short and flat, and the other one the mucky muck, but still pretty relatively flat. And we had the Kevlar canoe. It weighed like 40 something pounds. We had a couple fishing poles and a little bit of tackle. I said, dude, instead of emptying this out, let's just, you grab the front, I'll grab the back, and we'll just walk it across. Because in my mind, it was going to be relatively flat, but it was a mountain.
It was a mountain.
Up the mountain, and it was a rocky mountain. And when you're carrying the back of the canoe, and the canoe's below your eyes, you can't see the rocks coming. So even though I was doing my best, I caught a rock wrong. I had wet shoes on. I slipped. I didn't want to drop the canoe because you could break a Kevlar canoe pretty easily on rocks. So I did my best to protect the canoe, which left me into a flat Superman pancake down onto a pile of rocks. My leg went pretty numb pretty quick. And I took a good few seconds to let the thought run through my head. If my leg is broken, what am I going to do? And then I was like,
legitimately concerned.
yeah. I go, okay, I'm going to try to move my leg and see if it moves. And it moved. So it wasn't broken. Crisis averted. But I don't know what I did. It's clearly like a deep bone bruise or something, or I tweaked a ligament because it feels like my leg's going backwards.
At one point, you're like, I think I might puke.
Yeah.
And then you lay it on your back. I'm like, I'm a little concerned right now. Not good.
But even today, now it's 5 days ago. It hurts. So that was an injury. And then on that same lake, it got really sunny, and I sprayed DEET, like full strength DEET, on my hands, and then the sun hit it and created, I must be allergic or something. I don't know what it was, but it was like getting a chemical burn on my hands that hurt for multiple days, to where I was putting my hands in the water. Once it started like sizzling, I tried to wash it off, and it was just too late. I had to wear gloves on the way out because just even touching or gripping anything hurt my hands so much. So being prepared for, emergencies, or being prepared for slight to major injuries, is something everybody needs to take into consideration. So, Scott, I think you got through pretty scot-free, like that play on words.
I did get a little bit lucky. My biggest issue is this is going to sound like a humble brag or a flex, but when you handle a lot of fish, you will get cut. So our lake trout, our pike, they have these gill rakers. So if you're looking at a gill arch and it's shaped like this, the red part on the front, the gill filaments, and then the rakers are on the back. If you go into predator fish, they tend to be very grippy and sharp. And I know certainly if you're holding them for pictures, you want to keep your hand out of the gills if you're going to release them. But if they're going to be destined for a meal, you're usually handling them. I know I got cuts that way. Walleyes, their opercle or their gill cover, very, very sharp. And you're pulling that fish out of the landing net, taking it out, getting it strung up. And I have so many cuts on my hands that we're squeezing lemons on our fish around the fire. We're putting hand sanitizer on and, applying bug spray. No matter what it was, your hands are burning from all those cuts that you get. So it's a good problem to have, I guess is the way to put it. That was my injury.
I don't know if you can see it anymore. I'm not flicking anybody off, but those are walleye teeth right
Flicking
there.
everybody off.
I was thinking about getting those tattooed on my finger, those walleye teeth cuts.
There you go. See if I can.
So,
That's a walleye
oh, that's a
opercle.
walleye, yeah. Adam, you sporting any cuts or bruises?
Yeah.
All you guys from south of Minnesota are it's ironic that your middle fingers are getting hurt.
You had quite the mishap, Adam. Adam was the only person. Derek went swimming purposefully. Adam went swimming accidentally.
Yeah. I kind of dubbed that the boundary water baptism. Had over the side of the canoe. Just one of those kind of just very minor things, no big deal for me. But thank you so much to Scott for getting me on my personal best walleye. We had this awesome walleye in the boat, and when you're in the front of the boat, Brand, you mentioned it. It's kind of awkward to do the over the shoulder, trying to hold that over, and the person in the back's trying to get a good photo. And Scott, being so gracious, offered to pull the canoe over to a shallow spot there on an island where I could get a nice photo with this particular walleye. And I just misjudged my footing stepping off the side of the canoe, and and it was a shallow area, and I kind of judged it as maybe knee deep at best. And man, I 1 foot over the side of the canoe, left foot hit the rocks below, and just instantly lost footing. And there was two things that happened within a split second. One, either I was going to try to hold on to the canoe and flip the whole canoe and put Scott in the water, or just let go and head first over the side. So I took a quick dive off the side of the canoe, totally head under. Popped back up pretty quick. Yeah, nothing hurt but my pride. Scraped my shin a little bit on the side of the canoe when I went over, but all in all, I consider it a rite of passage to have a boundary water baptism while I was there. And still got a great photo out of it.
So
I thought you were sporting a big old bruise.
I did have a baseball sized bruise on the inside of my thigh. I don't know if it happened then or another moment whenever I was trying to step over a canoe. I'm not quite sure when it happened, but it either happened then or there's one time I got kind of tripped up on the side of the canoe. So not quite sure when it happened, but I came back with a pretty good bruise, couple scrapes, and a couple of fish fins on the hands. But on that side of it, not too bad.
Battle Don?
I'm going to vary away from the fish cuts and bruises, but one thing I kept secret from you guys beforehand, because I knew Brandon's confidence level in me showing up for trips was already about 40%. I spent about 2.5 days in the hospital beforehand, the week before, an old neck break that I did about 18 years ago. Out of nowhere, I had a pinched nerve flare up, and it was excruciating. And I was really, really worried about not being able to make the trip. Somehow that miraculously got better the harder I worked it, which was contrary to what the doctor and all my loved ones said was going to happen. But that was a comfort. But what did get me was my feet. And I was expecting maybe if I got anything, it would be a little swamp foot, because, when you're up there, we learned right away that you live in wool socks and sandals because you're always in and out of the water. I was afraid that, swamp foot, something like that, you just get infected somehow. But what got me was I have a problem with heel spurs, and there's a lot of walking on rocks in those water shoes, and my heels still feel like somebody took a ball peen hammer to them. And it was just from spending too much time in the wrong shoes, not in the right boots. That's why as soon as I got back into camp, I peeled, I stripped down all my extra clothes out of my pack, and my indulgence really was extra socks. I brought 7 pair of socks, and being able to put a fresh pair of socks on in those boots in camp was a big blessing. It was like a warm shower. So, my feet are still pretty sore just on both heels, but that's the worst I got to deal with. I'll do it again tomorrow.
Are those heel spurs how you avoided the Vietnam draft?
It is. It kept me out of the draft twice.
Derek, what did you mess up on the trip?
Oh, well, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was early in the trip. It was at the first campsite. We go around, we're all wet, and finally got drunk. I had my rain clothes on, my rain pants, my raincoat, going down to get in the boat, and all happy, right? Full, ready to go catch some fish. Man, I stepped on a slippery rock getting in the boat. I fell right on my ass immediately. Mm-hmm. My left leg, my left arm, completely soaking wet. I probably threw a few things, but I didn't think much of it. I get home and the wife is looking at my butt, right? There's a bruise about the size of a softball. It's like black on my butt. So apparently that was harder than I thought it was.
That's
so
funny.
You told her it was the other partner to our group. You said, "That's from Joe."
That's right. He was after me. But that, and then I cut my hand pretty good on that last portage coming out through the mud. I got a slice there, but yeah, I still have the black mark on my ass about the size of a softball.
Well, I think it's time to transition into some fishing stories. So I think we'll start off with the highlight for you. Like, what was the highlight of the fishing? For me, I'm really glad that Scott pushed for us to go up to that lake. He even loaned us the right gear to use so we could get some lake trout. Doing that allowed me to get the boundary water slam, which is the walleye, the northern pike, the smallmouth bass. What am I missing? Pike, lake trout, smallmouth, and walleye. And then I threw in a couple goggle eye to sweeten the pot. So going up there and getting all 4 was pretty cool. And in fact, I actually got them all in one day, which was amazing, I thought. So Derek and I tried and tried and tried for pike, and we only got one in the boat the whole time. So
Yeah, I didn't catch pike.
so I guess getting the boundary water slam on the first attempt was pretty special for me, and didn't really have an interest in it at first, but it grew on me as Scott showed how much interest he had in it. And I thought, all right, we'll go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say highlights on the fishing side. We had a little group throw in on Brandon was kind enough to secure some Rapala jerk baits, some Maverick jerk baits. We all threw in the pot, and on that last day I was up out fishing lake trout and put it down and managed to catch 3 lake trout. And the last one of the day that I caught was 24 inches, which is a nice, eating size. I probably 3, 4, 5 pound lake trout, but that ended up winning the pot just because we were doing a lot of our catching on live bait. That was a highlight. The lake trout fishing was good. I did not do the slam only because we just couldn't seem to buy a pike. We were trying to fish pike and we were catching walleyes. The walleyes were at, almost to a nuisance at that point, but you can't really complain about it. There was a few pieces of structure that Joe and I worked around, and we picked up a fish every drift or every rotation around a reef or around a wind blown point. There were multiple locations that we pulled multiple walleyes. So really, too many things to point to, but excellent fishing.
Yeah, the pike were scarce. I had one onto the boat that got off, and it was a little bit bigger, but not huge. And then I had a 20-incher, 20 and a half, because we were trying to get to Adam's 21. Fellas, you think now's the time that we tell Scott that we let him win? Like, as host, we all agreed like ahead of time just to let him win. So
Probably the right time. Yeah.
yeah. Pal Don, what was your highlight?
Fishing. Just the whole experience. It was I caught a really, really nice walleye that I was proud to put back in the water. Got one that was 25 inches, and that's a personal best on the walleye. I've only caught a handful of pike in my life, and like I said, we seem to have it figured out. I'm going to give it up to Adam because he had it was a 30-plus incher that got off and got him a little down and motivated him a little more to get out there and get one. But yeah, I'd say the big walleye, I caught a 29 and a 3/4 inch pike that was a personal best. And so I did, 2 PBs on this trip, which was really satisfying. And then a nice thumper smallmouth to boot. I did not do the slam. I did the Hoosier style slam because that day I also threw in a respectable largemouth, which I was surprised to see up there. My 4th was a largemouth. Did not get into any goggle eye, but we kind of figured out the pike early. We started beating the bank early and fishing for some smallmouth, and we got some pike follows. I got to give it up for Tim Flanner. He, some of the guys, some of our listeners probably know him as one of Shag's known associates, and he does some beautiful hand painted jerk baits. And I had a little 3-inch rainbow trout painted jerk bait that he had given me that seemed to be the magic number on those pike. I fished the jerk bait that we had for the contest, and I pulled a couple in with it. But Flanner's little 3-inch jerk bait was golden. Anytime we were beating the bank, hitting little rocky crags or blow down trees that were out in the water, we could usually pull a smallmouth or a pike out of there and get them up to the boat. I did lose one right off the bat and learned my lesson early. We were fishing smallmouth, and I had just my medium action spinning rod with a jig and a 3-inch twist tail on it, and a really nice pike shot out from under a down tree, and I saw it take the bait. I set the hook, and it was so instant that I never felt any weight on the line. It just, the second that it bit down, it had already cut through my line, and I watched a chartreuse 3-inch twist tail swim into the shadows again.
So are we still on your one highlight? Just checking.
My one highlight, my 2 PBs.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure.
Talking
Derek.
fishing. I'll talk fishing the rest of the show.
Derek, what's your highlight?
Honestly, I think it was going up and catch those lake trout. Like, I mean, what a day, right? Like, I caught a pretty average lake trout. You know, we went up there and pretty much checked the box. It was really cool going up there, floating that, you know, paddling, drifting, and trying to catch lake trout, which I never tried to do in the past. Scott gave us some, you know, a quick, this is how you should go do it. Here's some, you know, here's a spoon and sinker, you know, weight and all that, and go up there pulling lake trout out of that other lake that was 5,000 feet higher than our lake. You know, I mean, but for real, like it was pretty high, and I mean that was a big day. It was cool that we went up there and did that in the wind, and that was definitely my highlight as far as fishing goes.
So
I
Scott
wish I
told
was
us
like
Scott told us we had to stay in the zone between 40 feet and 60 feet deep, and you have to drop it down and then kind of troll that zone. And
we
I
were
caught
arguing.
what's that?
We slightly argued. Me and you. That was,
Oh yeah, you wanted to fish like 100-foot water.
I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
give a
here
shit,
too.
man. Let's just drift across all of it. Let's just stay at the
Scott said to go here. He showed us on the map where to go.
Fine. I'll
But
paddle
it
more.
was interesting how like getting a bite from a fish with your bait down 50 feet. Like, you know, I caught maybe a 5-pound lake trout, and the tip of the rod just goes tip, 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 tip. And I'm like, that was weird. Set the hook, and there's a fish on there.
Yep,
So
there's one there.
that was pretty wild.
But that was
All right,
that
I
was
think
experience. That was
we got to start wrapping this up. It's getting late at night, but couple more rounds. We'll do something you would do different this time. I would bring more warm clothes. It got colder than I expected. I actually took clothes out of my pack before we went in, left them in the cabin, which we haven't even mentioned how beautiful that cabin was that we stayed in of Scott's family's. But like this sweatshirt that I'm wearing, it stayed on the dresser in that cabin because I was like, I don't need that. I would have walked on water to get this on Tuesday. And, there was one point where I was chattering my teeth and shaking. I had to go crawl in my sleeping bag and roll up the top and create like a human oven to warm up. So I wish I'd have had more warm clothes. So don't underestimate how cold it can get. Don't underestimate how wet you can get. And don't underestimate the value of more warm clothes and more dry bags. Scott.
Yeah. I not too many regrets, just having done it enough. I can't think of too much. You can always regret that you wish you had grabbed this or you brought too much of that, but that's part of the fudge factor. I do bring a lot of gear in case of an emergency, or we need this or we need that, or there's, this much food in case, you never know how much someone's going to eat or not eat. So you kind of have to roll with the punches when you're leading the trips, but I can't think of a great regret, so I'm going to kind of take a pass on that one and send
Not
to the
necessarily
next.
a regret, just something you would do different. And I've got one for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Add pancake mix to the barrel. Like pancakes out there around the campfire would have been great. We didn't even think about it until we got back and saw it sitting on the shelf. Like pancakes are easy. That like floury pancake mix is easy to get in there and easy to make. So some pancakes in the morning would be a solid addition.
So we used to do them once upon a time, and we switched over to oatmeal just so we didn't have to clean up as much of a mess and get out and get to the fishing. But I hear you. It's we did eat pretty well.
Yeah, we ate fine. Pancakes are good. Adam, something you do different.
Well, real quick, Brad, you skipped me on the fishing. I'll throw out just a real
Oh shit,
comment
man!
on
Sorry
that.
about that.
Oh,
I
no
didn't mean
worries,
to-
man.
Yeah.
I think Scott will appreciate my comments on this one. So I went to the Boundary Waters as a smallmouth bass fisherman, and I came back a walleye fisherman.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think I'm hooked, man. That's Pal Don and I started off just pounding the banks. That's what we do. That's what I'm used to. There's some smallmouth. The males were starting to get up on some, setting up the beds along the banks. We could target those. We saw those. In particular, I was after a pike. I was trying to get that big fish on day one so that I could kind of relax off of that, and hopefully I had it on the line. There was a 30+ inch pike that we got right up to the side of the boat, and it shook it loose. But that was kind of my strategy going into it, was just to pound the banks and try to get that pike. And we had a lot of success that first day or so, and I really enjoyed the smallmouth fishing. It was incredible. But then, once Scott gave us a few tips on the walleye, I'd never really had that kind of success before, and got us on a location there, and you all showed us, where you had some success there at the tabletop location, and we're getting 20-inch walleye just back to back to back. It hooked me. So I'm a fan of it, and plus getting to eat those fresh every day was an absolute treat. So there's my fishing recap for you, Brad.
Well, I like to hear that from my friend who has the nicest walleye boat of anyone I know. So when you need another shotgun rider to get back up there, I'm in, man.
Man, I'm ready to plan the next trip. I'm looking forward to it. That's
as fun as it was, I have no shame in saying that. As much as I love the wilderness, a nice cozy cabin with a big walleye boat wouldn't hurt my feelings either. So
I was thinking that the whole time. I was just imagining the amount of water we'd be covering with that trolling motor, just to be pounding the banks on those smallmouth. We could have covered a lot of ground with the trolling motor, and that's kind of the one thing that I was thinking about there for a little bit, but it didn't distract at all from quality of the fishing that we had.
Definitely spot locking over the humps. So
yep.
All right, well then you get to go back to back, man. Like, what would you do different other than bringing your boat?
Well, you touched on the clothing situation. That was one thing I was really trying to do the best I could to keep my pack as light as possible. I envisioned the portages and tried to make sure that we had a light as possible pack on my back. And so I was pretty limited on the clothes. I think I had maybe 3 changes of clothes in there, and we got those first couple sets of clothes wet pretty quick. So you already touched on that, but for me, it was the air mattress. I got a thin, lightweight backpack style air mattress, something that fit in the palm of your hand kind of thing that would fit in the backpack. And a couple nights into that, I was wishing I bought that $300 rest we saw there in Duluth. That was looking pretty good about the time. I with my back, being a 6.5 foot tall guy and sleeping on the ground. I was kind of wishing I had that little bit thicker air mattress. That's probably the one piece of gear I would have changed.
Yeah, Derek and I talked about that. Like, we're not getting any younger, and sleeping good is important. So it's worth maybe a pound or 2 extra to take a really nice air mattress.
I'm telling you, as hammock's the way forward every time.
But we already talked about that too. You don't have any storage with your hammock, so
bring a tent to store shit, whatever. At least you sleep well.
Don, different.
I impressed myself on this one. I'll do a minor humble brag here. Normally I throw crap in a bag and I go, and I started planning for this a month out, and I packed, unpacked, repacked, second guessed, and took stuff out all along the way, put back in things I thought I'd need. I was really happy with the way I was set up, but I learned one lesson, that you don't bring untested gear on something like that. A little weekender trip is a good time to test gear, but I've got a stack of hammocks, and I'm a diehard hammock guy too. I've got a stack of hammocks, and I grabbed a different one than I planned on, simply because it had a built-in bug net, and it wasn't quite as comfortable as they normally are. It was fit me a bit narrow. With that being said, it was fine. I would have been more comfortable in retrospect in my other one. And the other thing I did was I brought a bait caster. I thought I was going to need a little heavier tackle for some of the bigger stuff, but this bait caster I brought was untested. It was new to me, and I ended up just putting it away, and I fished with just my one spinning rod all week. It would have been helpful to have that second spinning rod set up so I could switch back and forth easier. But all in all, man, I was not much I'd change other than just saying bring gear that you already know you can trust, and don't figure that you'll figure it out in the field because you'll regret it.
Derek, what would you do different?
Well, honestly, like Pale Don said, I wouldn't do a whole lot different. I mean, my sleeping arrangements were pretty great. I love sleeping on a hammock, but I guess one thing is, so I've got these like merino wool base layers. And so you guys saw all the pictures. I always got that green base layer on. I love that thing. Like I wore it every day, except for the day where you caught a fish. I was like changing my shirt. I dropped it in the friggin' lake, so my base layer got soaking wet. If I could do it again, I would have brought, I've got another one of those. I would have brought the other merino wool base layer. That way I didn't have to wear the same dirty one or wash it and then dry it. That if it would have rained every day, I would have been fine. I would have brought that, and I would have dropped one of my other like long sleeve like fishing shirts. You know, I brought 2 of those. I didn't need 2 of those. But you know, I was pretty happy with what I did, and I wouldn't have changed much, honestly. So,
All right. Well, normally we would do kind of a final thought and then we'd move into the gear review, but I kind of want to do an extended gear review because it's so important to this. So I want to do, everybody has their one piece of gear that you're going to show that you're really glad you took along, but I also want something that you brought that you could have left behind. You know, Don kind of did that with the bait caster already, so that's a good example. Something that you brought that you didn't use. For me, everyone knows how sweet I am as a person, so I think mosquitoes love me just naturally, so I'm the anti of Scott. They weren't bad at all, but they were still there. And so the thermocells were awesome. This is my thermocell lantern that I kept in my tent. So double function, thermocell on top, lantern. I gave my dad my green regular handheld one when I got back because he'd never even heard of them before. So, but anyways, it's just amazing how well thermocells work. If you've never used one, it's just an unbelievable invention that's so simple. Essentially, you have a small butane cylinder that goes into your thermocell like this. They're very replaceable. You screw it back in, and then these pads are impregnated with bug spray. And then there's a metal pad underneath there that's heated. There's no batteries needed, but there is for the lantern, but not for the normal thermocell. And this one, you just like click it, look in there, and you can see the flame going. So you know it's working. Give it a few minutes. It starts emitting that smoke into the air, and the mosquitoes just don't bother you at all. It's amazing. So I wouldn't go there without a thermocell or 2. I'm a huge fan of that. I took a lot of things that I didn't need to take, mostly tackle. I took too much tackle. I took a fly rod, never broke that out because really it was different than I thought. I thought there'd be like a lot more moving water connectivity spots where we could fish. There weren't any or very, very few of those that we experienced. So I never did that. But the one thing that I brought, knowing I probably didn't need to bring it, was my big jackery. So I've got a big, maybe like 4 foot by 2 foot solar panel that folds in half, and then a jackery battery charger that's about the size of a lawnmower battery. So it was a lot to carry in there. It did get used a little bit, but I could have easily gotten by with a small battery charger. And I learned about Paddle Don solar panel that was like a trifold that was totally sufficient. So even though the jackery was awesome in use, it certainly wasn't needed. And I'm glad I figured that out. So Scott, you got any gear?
Yeah, my gear review. I know I shared. I'll share with everyone else. Back in September of last year, I was starting off an elk hunt by doing some fishing at Fort Peck, and I camped out on some Army Corps property. And long story longer, my tent and pad and a bunch of stuff was stolen, and so my in-laws for Christmas replaced some of that gear, and I did get an insulated Static V Lux sleeping pad from Climate. I was kind of disappointed because I had a Thermarest Neo Air, insulated, super expensive pad that got stolen, and this was kind of the replacement. It's not as expensive as the Thermarest, but I was pleasantly surprised with how it held air, how it was warm, and it had a really nice flippable function for filling and taking air out. It was kind of I'm sure it's their proprietary design, but it seemed to hold air in and not leak air out in the middle of the night. So that was pleasant. And if I was going to leave anything behind, there was probably one or two shirts that didn't make the rotation just because I didn't get around to them. And you want them there if you want the extra insulation if you're layering. So it's not that big of a regret, but there's always a few things that you don't use, some of which you could live without and you don't take the next time, and some of them you just have as insurance.
Adam?
So one of the things I was pretty happy with bringing along was my fish pack, this Filson waterproof fish pack. So it's kind of like fanny pack style where it goes around your waist and lightweight, totally waterproof. I had a couple different lure packs inside of it. Could get a few more pieces of gear inside of that. And so whenever you're doing these portages and you've got, a big backpack on your back or a front pack on, to be able to have all of my tackle gear is just something I can strap around my waist, super lightweight, had exactly what I need. That was probably the most beneficial piece of gear that I would suggest bringing along. It's just a easy way to bring your tackle along. Don't bring more than what you need. Just try to keep that as simple as possible.
Yeah, I would say if it doesn't fit in a pack that size, you don't need it.
Yeah. And of course, the elephant in the room here, the one piece of gear that I would probably leave behind, that's leave behind bear spray. So I'll preface this story by saying, and Brandon, you know me. I don't know that everyone else knows me as well as you, but I'm a prepared person. I'm a cautious person. I like to be prepared for whatever the worst case scenario may be. And typically, whenever we're in a situation where we're off the grid, we're in the backwoods, whatever it may be, I've got a sidearm on me. I'm trained with it. I'm comfortable with it. Like that's my last line of defense whenever we need it. That's what I have. That's what I carry. But looking at the boundary waters, and of course, Scott's advice too, that's just something we don't need up there. One being we're getting in and out of canoes. We're wet all the time, just having to worry about having a sidearm where it's going to get wet, having to dry it out. That's a hassle. That's a concern. But part two, the state of Minnesota, I did some research on it before we came up there. It's not exactly a friendly state to be able to carry or open carry, and having to apply for a permit ahead of time to a local sheriff's office to put that application in to be able to legally carry in the Boundary Waters area up there. Not something we're able to do. So what's the next best option for having some concern about whether it be particularly with bears or wolf or very rare thing of a mountain lion or something like that up there, needing to have some line of self-defense if something did happen, worst case scenario. That's typically what I'm preparing for, is to be able to handle any situation like that. So the solution was, as you suggested, Brandon, well, we can carry bear spray, and you had them sitting right there on the counter at the cab in the night. I grabbed one of them and I snapped it on the back of my pack. Not really having a concern while we were in camp, around all the guys, didn't really have a concern of that. And probably my biggest concern was, hey, those portage situations where, we're walking through kind of a brushy area, not really a good line of sight, and just kind of thinking that's the time when I might need it. So it's hooked on the back of my pack. It's available if it's needed. Didn't really give it much thought other than it's in the holster. I read the instructions on it. It's got a safety pin on it. You have to pull that out if you want to deploy it, know which direction to point it. End the story right there. As far as my preparation for it. The unfortunate thing that happened here, as you guys all know, somewhere between me taking that pack out of the canoe on that last portage that we had, the pin was pulled out of it. I don't know if to this moment, I still don't know if it got caught on a tree limb. I don't know if it fell out, if it it's some kind of defect. I don't know. I do know for a fact it was on there whenever we loaded out that morning. It blew in the dark. It was a white pin. But somehow between there and loading it back into the canoe on the other end of the portage, the safety pin came out of it, and placing the pack in the canoe at the end of the portage there, it went off. Something hit it. It bumped it whenever it dropped into the canoe, and I got a shot of bear spray, point blank range, right between the eyes. probably less than 24 inches, 18 inches from my face. And there's just that moment there. Like, I've had now 4 or 5 days here to reflect on this. And there was an instant when I realized what happened before I felt what happened. And that instant was like the biggest oh shit of my entire life. And I think I gasped out Don probably will recount some of the words that I use whenever
Water. Water.
Yeah.
Water.
And
Water.
There was a certain other word that came out a few times first.
Figured there's a couple of those too. And you guys can recount your experience with that. But man, I tell you what, there was 5-10 minutes there when it was one of the most excruciating pains I've ever experienced in my life. I mean, it literally it felt like my face was on fire. The lucky part about this, I'm trying to get a couple takeaways from this. And one of them being, hey, if this were to have happened in the middle of the woods somewhere where I didn't have an endless supply of water to splash in my face, that would have been a disaster. Because that's the only relief that I had from this was splashing some water on my face. And Brandon, you leading me to the end of the boardwalk there where I could sit down on the boardwalk, and I was just constantly splashing water in my face for, I don't know, you guys tell me 15, 20 minutes by the time it finally, I had no vision for 10 minutes probably. And that next 10 minutes where I was starting to kind of catch my breath and, recover from the shock of what had happened there, but absolutely excruciating pain. And I don't know, my takeaway from it is I was over prepared. And the worst case scenario happened for me being over prepared. And my takeaway is, sometimes you're just not in control. Sometimes it's better just to, kind of let it go and just, maybe take my chances with whatever that very, very minimal chance of having an encounter with something that you wouldn't be able to handle. But that probably outweighs what it was to take that with me and the risk that came with that thing accidentally going off and shooting me in the face. Like it was a excruciating experience. Luckily it only lasted about 15 minutes, and you guys tell me what you think about it. But, hey, I was ready to paddle out of there and get the heck home. And that shower that I had at the cabin there, Scott, is the best shower I've ever had in my entire life, man.
Well, I got a new respect for bear spray. I mean, that shit worked. You were incapacitated. So like if somebody was trying to attack you, like, and you shot him in the face with bear spray, you're going to win that fight. So you told me, Adam, that it was like someone poured gasoline on your face and lit it on fire.
I've never had that experience. And luckily it wasn't I don't know what it feels like to have those kind of burns, but I'm sure that sticks with you a little bit longer. But for that 10 or 15 minutes there, I couldn't imagine it being much worse, man. It felt like my face was on fire.
Dang.
I'm glad you're okay. I mean, it could have happened in a worse spot too. I mean, you said it could have happened in where there's no water, but as far as where we were, it was always water. I mean, it was all muddy, right? If it would have happened on the other side of the portage, I would have just chucked you in the lake and be like, open your eyes underwater, right? Here, if I throw you in, it's just going to be all black mud and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was something, man. All right, Don, you've already given us a couple pieces.
I want to reflect real quick on what Adam said, because that was one of it might have been his biggest oh shit moment. It was one of mine as well, just because I was sitting in the boat already, and he went to do this last minute adjustment on his pack.
Did you pull the pin, Don?
That's what I thought this was when he was going to apologize.
Pull the pin.
Are you going to apologize?
But the funny thing
Finally,
is, somebody
you're
on
gonna
that
admit it?
portage is going to find that pin and be like, "Oh, somebody's day is about to go real bad." I'm sure that thing's laying in the middle of the portage. But I'm not trying to take anything away from what Adam went through, because I nothing but sympathy.
Because you shot him in the face with bear spray?
So now I'm sitting in the boat, and it's 4 feet in front of me, and I heard, it was the shortest little burst, but you could hear the power in it. I heard, psh, and that's all the longer it was. But I looked up in time to see him take it directly between the eyebrows from about 18 inches away. And then as it dawned on me what was happening, the mist drifted back, and just that 1/1,000,000th of a percent that I got of what he got, I breathed it in, and I just had to go to the other end of the boardwalk and start just kind of coughing it up, and my lips were on fire. And I got nothing. I mean, nothing compared to what he got. But when after everything was all said and done, and we were ready to shove the boat off, Adam looked at me and said, "I can't see anything. I'm just going to put my head down and paddle." and he was a trooper. He just put his head down and paddled. About 20, 25 minutes later, he said, I can see now and the sunlight's not burning. But I got sliding the boat forward out of there. I got one little nick on the end of my finger. And you were talking about lemon juice and burns and whatnot. I got a little bear spray in that, and it felt like somebody put a needle in the end of my finger that went all the way up my forearm. That one little fresh cut with a little bit of residual bear spray in it. I can't even begin to imagine what Adam went through. So you handled it like a gentleman, man. I'd still be screaming and throwing stuff. Glad we had the water there. Everybody jumped in, did their part, and glad you're all right, man. My review is, Brandon said something about we did a lot of solar. I had a little solar panel that I used to keep my spot radio going, but the best investment I made was this thing. I got it. Cabela's. It's actually made for running trail cams off of. I took my soldering iron, took it apart, took the lead out of it, and I soldered my lead in for my Garmin sonar. And that little thing, I charged it before I left. I left the solar panel up all the time and just left it in the canoe when we were fishing, when it was in camp, all the time. Never had to charge it. It was always ready to go. So that and the Garmin itself, because that's one thing that I was surprised by, is that it really helps you to have sonar out there in the areas we were fishing. I didn't expect that, but you could actually pinpoint fish. You could pinpoint features. Otherwise, you're just blindly trying until you stumble across a fish. And that was a difference maker for us. So having the Garmin and the setup that we did, and then having that solar battery, so I never had to worry about power. It was still on about 85% when I got home. So it maintained very, very well. Couldn't be happier with it. They should make one for the Garmin for that reason, so I don't have to cut and hack and solder. But if anybody wants one, I'll build you one.
Anything you would have left behind other than that bait caster?
A bait caster, and that was just a rash choice I made on the way out the door. I just swapped out for my Grand Trunk hammock, but other than that, everything was good.
Hey, I forgot to ask you this earlier, and I don't want to forget. Did Joe kick us $20 in, Scott?
He did.
All right.
I made sure it was on the Venmo request. Yep.
Good man.
That's something else I'm glad we brought along is Joe. He's a great guy.
Joe's a great guy.
For sure. I would go there.
Yeah, Joe is
Yep.
solid.
He is.
Gave us a lot of faith in the American teaching system.
He tells a good story. He's a great sport. He takes a lot of grief from me, but he's a heck of a guy to bring along for sure.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I wish he was here. That'd be good.
Derek, what did you enjoy having along, and what would you have left behind?
Real quick, I gotta say, like Don said, man, having the fish finder was awesome. So I'm super glad you brought the fish finder. I mean, that made so much. We couldn't have told if we were in 20 foot of water, 100 foot of water, and having that there was great. But as far as my gear review goes, I bought a new paddle on the way up. Bent shaft blade, bending branches Viper is what it is. And man, I love this thing. With as much as we paddle, like this really made a big difference in how me and you got around. And I'm super happy that I spent the $200. I think it was like 210 or 215 bucks on this thing, but damn, it was worth it. My other paddle was lightweight, but it could have broken half than what would we had done, and I just felt like I had so much power with this bench paddle.
Well, the experienced guys had the bent shaft too, and then you said you loved it. Like, what was it that you loved? And Scott, you can chime in too. Like, about and Adam, you got a new bend shaft one too. Like, well, not the bent shaft, but the
bent blade.
The bent blade, yeah.
Right. So I had the bent shaft, bent blades. I mean, pedal this way, right? So you push down like this, so the blade goes forward, and then you can get a longer stroke in. So you push farther back, and you just have a lot more, a fuller stroke, I guess. And just having this bent shaft as well, I just felt like I had a lot more power, and I could move my hands, so I would get hot spots here. I wouldn't get hot spots here. I was able to move it back and forth. I'm all about this thing. I would totally buy it again if I could. And
we
it's cheap
stopped.
for the other knockoff brand or the other brands that I saw, I guess.
We
So-
stopped at Rutabaga in Madison, Wisconsin on the way up. That is an incredible paddle shop. That's where he grabbed that. And
That was cool.
and that was a great time. Just a quick 20-minute side trip in there was well worth it.
Yeah, they had all the nice stuff, and it's pretty. But
Nice
it's
paddle.
weight, strong. So
What would you've left
I'm guessing
behind?
something, huh?
What would
Something
you
I had to
left?
leave behind.
Yeah.
I brought a like weather radio. You pull up the antenna and you can change weather bands, AMS. There were no weather bands up there. It was completely useless. You can use it to charge a phone, but I had a solar panel and a battery pack, so I didn't need it. And it was just something every time. It was also one of those things, you press the button and it makes a beep sound. I don't know if you guys heard it, but every time I'd move the friggin' pack around, we were portaging. Beep, beep. And it was driving me crazy. I almost threw it in the friggin' lake.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Well, I got to get up at 4 a.m. and drive to Iowa, so we got to wrap this up. This is
I'll be at
Dang,
Iowa
you're-
tomorrow.
dang. You're going to Iowa tomorrow?
Yeah, man.
What part?
Shell Rock,
What part of the state is that in?
north of Waterloo. Just a
That's
little
where
bit.
I'm at. I'm in Waverly,
Oh, shit.
20 minutes north of Waterloo.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. That'd be cool. You come over and see the office.
I'll bring my four piece.
That's where my other that's where the other Retrieving Freedom office is at. So I'll be in Waverly all day. We're having in Cedar Falls tomorrow night. We're having a brewery tour at Single Speed Brewery.
Hell
So-
yeah.
You got to come to the party. All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Well, let's wrap it up, man. Yeah, we've covered a lot. Scott, dude, thank you. I did get a text from David Ray, the guy I told you who asked me to go for like 10 years and I never did. And he's like, see, I told you. Now I got to think up my apology and be like, look, man, it's all about timing. But it is all about timing. And I wish I'd have gone when I was younger, but hey, we got there and we did it. We checked that box. Will I go back? I hope so. Probably won't be an every year thing like so many people, but because I like doing so many different things, I would like to go up in that neck of the woods with Adam in his boat and do some island camping and some big long boat rides and catch some more than walleye. But yeah, I would say I'll be back in the boundary waters definitely at some point. Want to see Ely? Want to see that side of it now. But yeah, it was definitely one of those places you hear about, and for good reason. And I'm very thankful to have been. So, Scott?
Yeah, I agree. Kind of like we kicked it off with, it's a really special place. I know I'd shared with you guys that I'm hoping my kids someday will scatter some of my ashes up there. So, absolutely beautiful place with incredible scenery, incredible company, incredible fishing, just a place to make memories. So it's accessible to anyone that's willing to put the time and the effort into it. And it was great to have communion and fellowship with all you guys and show you a little piece of heaven. And the photography and everyone pitching in on camp chores, everything was awesome. We all learned a lot about each other and had a lot of fun. So I couldn't ask for anything more than what we experienced.
Yeah, that's great. Adam?
Well, thank you to the group for letting me join all this. Scott for leading us through this and showing us that incredible area up there. It's something that I've always wanted to do. It was a bucket list item for me to go up and experience that. And it lived up to the expectation there. And thank you, Brandon, for allowing me to come on the trip here. Paddle Don, excellent paddle partner. I'd do it again with you anytime, brother. Appreciate everything you did to make that happen. Derek, it was great to finally get to hang out with you and, heard so many stories about all your adventures, and to get to connect with you was excellent. So, yeah, I guess, Brandon, I'm with you too, man. I can't wait to get back up there. I want to continue to have different experiences in that area. There's just a lot to do. It's the first time I ever saw Lake Superior. I feel like that area up there just really called to me. There's just something about it that's unique that I haven't felt before. So I want to get back up there, do some more exploring, check out more lakes. To your point too, maybe bring the boat up and hit some of those bigger lakes where we can, bring the boat up with us. But Absolutely love the area, love the experience. Thank you guys so much for letting me come along.
Yep. Don.
Just to mirror what everybody else is saying, appreciate the opportunity, Scott. You were a heck of a host, and it was really great having that nice cabin to jump off from and jump back to and get in and out of reality.
Sure.
Quick side note, I learned on the day I came out that Jesse Main's a guy I know that from back in the historical reenacting days, came out the day after us, I believe, for a solo 30-day self-supported trip that he's got a lot of stories. I can't wait to catch up with him. I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. Big props to him for pulling that off, but if anybody can do it, he's the one. But yeah, thank you, Scott. It was great, and it's always good to do the driftwood thing.
There.
And like these guys were saying, Scott, it was awesome, man. I appreciate you doing the like the logistics and all the things that you do on your side, man. It really made life simple. All I really had to do was jump in the truck and drive up there for the most part, and really appreciate that, because this was something I've always wanted to do and was able to do it. And yeah, so thank you, and thank all you guys for being part of it. It was great. I'm not 100% sure. Like, fishing out of a canoe isn't fantastic. I don't know if I'd do exactly the same thing again. I mean, I would. If you ask, I'm in always. But I would like to go up there and do like a longer kayak trip, perhaps more on the adventure side, and or go up there and try to catch some fish out of Adam's boat and do some of the outer stuff too. But I had a great time. Thank you all.
Yeah. I think there's one more great example of the importance of keeping public lands in public hands.
Absolutely.
If you've not taken advantage of your wilderness areas in this country that belong to you, you should. And even though you're not, a lot of us are, and we have something special in this country, and it's hard to believe that there are people willing to divest of those for such short-term gain when there's so many opportunities for generations to come to experience the sort of thing that we just experienced. So with that, yep. Love every one of you guys, man. It was a hell of a trip, and we will see you down the trail.